Welcome to Post Fight with Ray Thompson. This show is powered by MMA Crypt and MMA Mental. For more interviews and podcasts, please subscribe to our YouTube channels, MMA Crypt and MMA Mental. You can also follow MMA Crypt on Facebook and Twitter. It's at MMA Crypt on Twitter and MMA Crypt on Facebook. To follow me, it's at MMA Mental on Twitter and Ray Thompson on Facebook. I am now joined by Brian Ebersole. Brian Ebersole beat John Howard at UFC 178 via split decision, taking his pro record to 51-16 and his UFC record to 5-2. Brian, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. Congratulations on beating a very, very tough John Howard.
Yeah, they haven't given me an easy opponent yet, so yeah, John was definitely a tough one in a long list of tough guys. But felt nice to get back in after a year and to get a win.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that now. It's been almost a year since you last fought, so what was the reasons for the layoff?
Well, I've had a pretty nagging injury since my first UFC fight. In the aftermath of that fight, so I'd been able to manage it for a couple fights. Obviously, I had my first split decision loss coming back and trying to fight again a month later. I knew after my fourth win I was going to take a break. But while I was still fit and there was a chance to go in and fight James Head, even with the injury a little bit still bothersome, which was the reason I was going to take time off, was to really sort that out. I figured I'd try to squeeze one more in. I was being greedy, and I lost that split decision. So I ended up taking the year and a half off to train for another fight. I pulled Rick Story. I re-aggravated my injury a couple weeks before the fight, about 16 days to be exact. Went through that fight because I had to, and then again took a year off to get back healthy. I mean, I thought I was good for the Story camp. I think I just pushed in training in a direction with an exercise that I shouldn't have, and sprung a bit of a leak. So I was a lot more careful, but after you re-aggravate something, you just don't know. So I really took my time and spent my time coaching in Thailand and just doing rehab, strength and conditioning work. And then I got confident enough to build back up for a fight. So that's what I did, and that's how I've spent my year.
Now, going into the fight, what were your views on John Howard as an opponent?
He hits really hard. That was pretty much my view. He hits really hard. He's got underrated jujitsu. He's got decent wrestling. Um, Matt Brown said he was the strongest guy he'd fought in an interview. So I looked at Matt Brown's opponents, and he'd fought some pretty strong guys in general. So I knew going in the clinch game was going to be a bit of a grind. He might not be quite as sticky as someone like Claude Patrick, but he was definitely as strong as Claude Patrick was in the clinch. So that really gummed the game up a lot there. Um, and yeah, the takedown's obviously hard to come by with a guy that's got a low center of gravity and strong hips. So I really tried to pick my spots and fight a patient fight. And learning from my mistake in the James Head fight, I really tried not to do anything to where my risk to do something offensive actually ended up looking good if he was able to defend it. I shot a bunch of double legs in my mind being aggressive with James Head, and I ended up losing the decision probably because of that. I think I actually won the offensive scoring battle, but because I let the story be that he defended my takedowns, the judges gave him a lot of credit. So with John Howard, I didn't want to miss a bunch of takedowns and put myself in front headlocks even though I wasn't getting damaged and just make it look bad from that standpoint. So yeah, it was a bit of a test of, I guess, patience on my part to be able to stand there, stand my feet, throw a few more strikes, and pick my spots.
Now, coming into this fight, as you've already mentioned, you were on a two-fight losing streak. Of course, you'd lost to James Head and Rick Story. Did you feel any added pressure going into the fight?
Yeah, I mean, your job's on the line. If I didn't win this fight, I'd probably get cut. So yeah, I mean, I needed to win. Um, but I can only fight how I can fight, and that's a decision in the moment. So when I'm in the ring, it's the same every time. I mean, you're just doing what you do based on the action and your own ideas and your own rhythm. And that's if you ever get rhythm going in the first place.
Now, we all know, anyone who's followed you, we all know you're a very well-rounded fighter. So ideally, where did you want this fight to take place?
Oh, I'd have loved to have stayed on his back the whole fight the way I was in the first round. I was pretty happy there, nice and relaxed, and had one of his legs grapevined and wrapped up and able to throw rabbit punches and look for opportunities, to isolate a limb. Um, but yeah, we spent a lot of time on the feet, which was fine. I mean, I've lived over at Tiger Muay Thai for a couple years, and I was visiting annually before that, so I was pretty happy to sit there and check kicks and trade a few punches and elbows and knees. But yeah, ideally, I'd have loved to have been on the ground with him, almost in more of a wrestling position as opposed to like the jiu-jitsu. I really made plans to get onto his back a little bit and do good work from there. And I got there once, and I never was able to threaten him later in the fight and make that happen.
Now, during the ground exchanges in the first round, like you just stated there, you were in a very dominant position. Howard is very strong. You've already mentioned that as well. How did you feel on the ground?
I was really, really happy where we were. The position I was in was something I worked on, obviously, kind of maintaining and not getting too greedy. You noticed that I slipped off of him when I tried to put my second hook in. And I think in my mind, the only reason I tried to go for the second hook is I knew we were getting toward the cage, and he was going to use the cage to put his back against and scrape me off of his shoulder anyway. So I was going to end up back in front of him. So I decided to take the big risk to go for the hook. When I fell off, um, I threw an up kick immediately and was looking probably to stand up or jump back into like a grappling scenario. But they kind of called me on the up kick a little bit. Thankfully, I didn't land clean in the face or anything. I did hit the body, but he gave me a warning and restarted us on our feet. But yeah, I mean, I'd have loved to have had open space there to work all four sides. Once I saw us getting towards the cage, it used to be the cage was the wrestler's friend, but now it's actually kind of turned because of the way people use it defensively. It's starting to turn into a tool for the guy on bottom to stand up and put his back against, so the offensive guy can't get on the back.
Yeah, it's mad how that's changed actually since the fight game started. Now, did you feel
Yeah, big evolution.
absolutely? Did you feel you'd done enough to win the first round?
Oh yeah, he didn't touch me in the first round, so of course I thought I won the first round.
Now, in the second round, we saw Howard working for the choke. Now, anyone who's followed you knows you can't be choked. How threatened did you feel in that position?
Well, he never even got under my chin, so it wasn't really about the choke when he had my back. Um, I gave him a look at my back, hoping that he'd fall off the same way I fell off in the first round, and we get back to our feet. Or I was going to be able to jump on top as he fell. So that was my plan. But again, underrated jujitsu, and he's got a purple belt for a reason, so he was able to stick to my back. He's not exactly Dennis Hallman though, so I was wrestling more just the position. I wasn't really worried about the choke. I was trying to punch and be a little bit playful and make him uncomfortable, even though he had the dominant position. And the same way in the Hallman fight, except with Hallman, I fought the hands a little bit harder and smarter because he is so dangerous. But with Howard, I didn't have to hand fight as much. I was able to punch and be playful, and I was just looking to finally get my turn. And in the Hallman fight, I know it took me about 2 minutes to turn over and get on top from that position. With Howard, I think maybe it was a minute, minute and a half he spent on my back before I was able to turn over. So yeah, kind of the same history repeating itself in a way.
Now, going into the third round, did you feel it was one round each?
Um, yeah, I knew because of the grappling position that he got that he probably won the round. As far as striking and overall, I think I actually threw more and landed more strikes in that round. Albeit none of them were huge, but even when I'm sitting up against the cage and throwing elbows at his shoulders and whatnot, and he's just holding on to my legs. Um, it's a hard game these days. Like again, I'm a wrestler, so I'm biased towards the guy on top, kind of getting the default win of the round, and I count on that sometimes. But um, as a fighter, to be fair, like sometimes even the the Boss Rutan and Kevin Randleman fight, like we kind of know Boss did really good work and damaged Randleman off of his back. So does it have to be that blatant for the bottom guy to win a round, or is there ever going to be a draw kind of round? If anything, I felt that round was almost a draw because he didn't do any damage um, with his positions. So yeah, I figured the judges gave it to him, but in my heart of hearts, and I think his too, it's not like he really pulled away and made a clear advantage, and he didn't really put me in a tough spot coming out for the third round in the sense that I was physically worn out or hurt. As far as energy, he didn't take a lot away from me that round.
Now, round three was very close and was mostly spent on the feet. How confident were you that you'd done enough to win the decision?
I think I threw and landed the cleaner punches like as counters, and kind of being with the Muay Thai scoring and things, I threw a fair few knees, and I tried to finish a lot of my combos with that body kick. So I was pretty happy finish off my combos and having him only return a leg kick or two. So yeah, I thought I won the round. I pushed the clinch and did what I needed to do. I think he thought he won the round too, but that's always kind of a personal bias. As long as someone doesn't hit you really, really hard or embarrass you, you think, oh, I won the round. Um, but if I go back and look and probably do the math, uh, I'm pretty sure I came out ahead as far as strikes landed and um, kind of pushing the clinch and pushing the pace in there, especially toward the end, being able to throw knees and elbows without him throwing much, but a few body punches back at me.
Now, at the start of the interview, you stated that you've had a terrible time with injuries. We've seen it over the last couple of years. How are you feeling after this fight? Have you got any injuries from this fight?
No, I mean, I obviously I took like four leg kicks on my outside of my left leg. I think two of those were off of me throwing combos and him countering, and then I got a little bit cheeky and silly at one point, and I changed my stance, and he hammered my leg once or twice when I tried to go orthodox, which maybe a technical error. There was no reason for me to have to go do that, and I definitely didn't make it to my advantage. So yeah, he chopped my leg that little bit, so I had a cork, a bit of a bruise. Um, and then I had a nice big swollen bit just below my right knee where he threw a lot of inside leg kicks. And I was lifting my leg and he was landing just below the knee. So his instep was hitting me just on the inside of my shin. And a couple times you'd see my leg go flying from lifting it and him kicking it. I'd fly back and almost change my stance. And that collision point, I probably took 4 or 5 kicks in the same spot. So all the soft tissue in there, the ligaments and tendons and whatnot, and obviously a bit of bone bruising. But that's pretty much going away. As I sit and rub it right now while I'm chatting with you, it's a little bit tender, but the swelling's gone. So it's going to be just a matter of getting in there with some thumbs and maybe a foam roller and breaking up any adhesions and making sure muscles aren't sticking to one another and all that little fun stuff that pretty much you do year round, in this sport with the collisions that we take. You try to make sure the muscles are supple and healthy and everything is running the same direction and not crossing over one another.
Ideally, then, when would you like to get back into the octagon?
Probably middle of next year, maybe June.
Now, you're now 5-2 in the UFC. You got any idea on who you'd like to face next?
Um, no, no one in particular. I mean, heck, John Howard and I should probably just go do it again. It was a fairly close fight, and he thinks he won from his reaction after the fight. And I respect him as an athlete, and I'd understand how he'd feel. So in that regard, if we ran that one back, that wouldn't be the worst thing. But past that, I mean, I don't really have a storyline going with any other single fighter. So it's pretty much going to be as it always is, whoever the UFC offers me.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me your time today, and thank you. Congratulations on winning again in the UFC.
Oh, absolutely, I appreciate it.
Before we let you go, Brian, I just want to give you a chance to do some shout outs. So, if there's anyone you want to thank, and also let the listeners know about your Facebook and Twitter.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at TWAS Ebersole. I'm on Facebook just simply under Brian Ebersole. I got a like page, an athlete page there. I'd like to thank Hayabusa. They've been a sponsor of mine, HayabusAFightwear.com. Ever since my first UFC fight, and even previous to that, all the way back to when I fought Carlos Newton over in Australia. Some of the best fight gear. I mean, the stuff that they gave me back in 2010, I'm still using it today, along with some of the newer stuff coming out that I pick and choose as they allow when fights come up. So I'm definitely got to thank them. Tiger Muay Thai, obviously for employing me, for sponsoring me, pretty much since 2009, let me come over there and learn the wonderful art of the 8 limbs. And big shout out to Roger Huerta and the rest of the staff over there for the things they're doing. Roger just won his 1FC fight, so quite proud of him being able to see that while I was still in training camp. Heading into this one gave me a bit of a boost, and we had two Russian athletes, Chechen athletes, Zubara and Maribek, who just won over in Sweden, first round TKOs. So big shout out to Tiger. Muay Thai, and On It Labs, the Joe Rogan company with their Alpha Brain and Shroom Tech and their Hemp Force Protein. They seem like they're doing it right, getting the best ingredients from awesome earth-grown plants and putting that out there for our consumption. So definitely got to appreciate them for supporting me the last couple camps and giving me the nice nutritional edge.
I was actually in Sweden, and the two guys you mentioned, I saw Roger as well, and they looked absolutely fantastic on the night. Well, I can't wait to see you step back in the cage, Brian.
I appreciate it, Ray. Enjoy the day.